Right now. Some are saying that the Environmental Protection Agency has become an asset, a weapon, if you will, of this Obama White House, lacking in transparency, and is now on a mission to control America's water. Is that the case? Is it not the case? There's a controversial new proposal being put out by the EPA. Joining me at this time from Washington, D.C. is environmental scholar with the National Center for Public Policy Research, Dr. Bonner Cohen. Dr. Cohen, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right, let's start with this. There's a new controversial proposal put out by the Environmental Protection Agency, which should be, certainly landowners in America should be aware of, certainly farmers and ranchers. Tell us about this proposal. Is it something that that you believe we should be aware, we should be keeping a close eye on?
Oh, by all means. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, has decided to, in effect, rewrite the Clean Water Act, which historically has given EPA jurisdictional authority over navigable waters of the United States. Now, I think we all understand what navigable waters would be: rivers, streams, bays, and channels. EPA has removed the word navigable from the law and now has given itself the power to regulate waters of the United States, which means intermittent, isolated waters, and in so doing is now putting itself in a position where it can regulate activity on the land surrounding these isolated and, in many cases, intermittent bodies of water. We're talking about ponds, we're talking about ditches, we're talking about other bodies of water that may just temporarily be there as a result of a lot of rain or snow melt or what have you. Now EPA has rewritten the law in such a way as to make it the effective lord and master over land throughout the United States, predominantly but not necessarily entirely in rural areas. And what it ultimately is going to do is it's going to introduce federal zoning all across the country.
All right, let me ask you this: what is their agenda here? What are they? Are they so caught up with the fear-mongering of quote-unquote man-made global climate change, or is there something more here than meets the eye in terms of what their agenda is?
Well, their agenda is ultimately control. And so under the guise of clearing up or clarifying its regulatory authority under the Clean Water Act, EPA is effectively making itself the zoning master of rural properties throughout the country. Now, many of our viewers, if they have property, they want to do something on it, what do they traditionally do? Well, they go get a permit, say from the county government or the city government. Now, if this proposed regulation is allowed to go into effect, they're going to have to go to EPA to get the permit. And believe me, there's one thing you don't want to do in life, and that's ask the EPA for a permit. A, it's going to take a month of Sundays before you hear back from them. And B, if they decide that they don't like an activity that you want to undertake on your land for which you paid and you're continuing to pay taxes, if they decide they don't like that and they turn you down, you have really no recourse.
Now, what is the bureaucratic process here? It's a proposal. They just want to remove that one word.
That's right.
They want to remove that one word, navigable, but it has a lot of meaning, as you pointed out. The word navigable from the phrase navigable waters. Does this go before Congress? How does this get approved, shot down? What happens?
Okay, right. Okay, what EPA is doing is, first of all, it's circumventing Congress. It's going around Congress it is doing this unilaterally under the rulemaking process associated with the Clean Water Act. So this is currently a proposal. There's a public comment period that's underway now that will be extended beyond the midterm elections. And then, if everything goes on schedule, EPA will then release the final version of this at the end of next year. In other words, what EPA is doing is that it is coming up with a rule and regulation under the Clean Water Act that has the force of law behind it, which means EPA is making law. So what can be done about this? Well, first of all, many of the parties affected by this, and this will be farm groups, ranch groups, forestry groups, mining groups, construction companies, home builders. Obviously, they're going to sue. They're going to sue EPA. That's going to keep it tied up for a couple of years. What I think is perhaps the most promising way to stop this is early next year, particularly if the Senate changes hands in November, to have Congress deny EPA the appropriations to carry out this regulation. That will set up a clash between Congress on the one hand and the president on the other, and we'll see how that works itself out.
Dr. Bonner Cohen, we thank you for joining us. It's a bureaucratic issue, but it's an important one that may slip through the cracks of our viewers' radar. We just had a guest on a week or two ago who's had his land taken away from him, valued at $300–400 million, not far from our studios. And he said the reason why they're after his land was because of the water. So this is interesting. Thank you for joining us. Can an